Good morning, everyone. My name is Carlos Bosch. I'm the head of technology for GSMA North America. And today I have two wonderful friends here to talk about 5G. Mr. Hassel Bacchus, Chief Technology Officer for TSTT in Trinidad and Tobago. Good morning, Hassel. How are you?
I'm good, Carlos. Good to be here, and thanks to Canto for facilitating this.
Thank you. And also I have Dr. Jyrki Pentinen, part of the technology group for GSMA in North America. Jyrki has been with us for about 3 years, and before that, he has done quite a stint in Europe and Mexico and many things. And Jyrki and you have written many books about 5G. Good morning, Jyrki.
Good morning, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, today I'm going to go first into a small introduction on 5G, what is happening, and then let's talk about the rationale. And I encourage everybody to put their questions that we can have a very nice conversation with 5G. But when we talk about 5G, the tendency is for us to focus on speed, latency, and massive IoT. But in my opinion, 5G is much more than that. 5G is a generational change. 5G is going to impact how to communicate, how we consume data, and how our cities will work. Next slide, please. To do that, industries like healthcare, manufacturing, they're all to be impacted by 5G. We are going to start not only seeing things different, but we're going to act very differently when we do 5G. Our lives will be easier. There will be a new source of jobs. And to do that, we need to look into our region. Most of our most of us lives in urban areas. And urban areas is going to be what how 5G is going to be impacted, how we're going to generate new cellular connectivity, and how we're going to do things. Next, please. Now, one key component of 5G, like I said before, is massive IoT. And massive IoT is going to impact public transportation, traffic congestion, waste management, air quality monitoring, and most of our members, mobile network operators, are going to take advantage of this. But 5G also is going to help us reduce the digital divide. 5G is going to help us to enhance what I call fixed wireless connection and being able to now have networks in places that or connectivity in places that we never had before. That is where the crux of 5G is going to be. Next. We at GSMA see the 5G, North America and the Caribbean at the forefront of 5G revolution. You will be surprised how many networks are going to be announcing that they're moving forward now and they're going to be launching 5G. In fact, if you look at this graph, by 2024, we believe that 43% of the networks in our region will be 5G. Next, please. Now, 5G adoption will be faster than expected. By 2022, GSMA Intelligence expects 24% of connections to be 5G. And by 2025, it will be 46%. Around 1 year ago, I presented something similar in CANTO, and it's interesting that the numbers were different. We were being more conservative because we were not looking at the Caribbean as a major source of 5G. Now with Trinidad, with Suriname, with all these countries moving forward and launching 5G, we have seen now that this is going to change. And I think these numbers will be revised every year, and it will be more positive. Next, please. Now, 5G has many building blocks, and how we launch 5G beyond the radio and spectrum efficiencies becomes, what do I want to do 5G? How my business plan align with some of these aspects? Do I choose millimeter wave? Do I go to the massive IoT route? Do I go through the fixed wireless route? Do I introduce network function virtualization in some aspects. Those things are the things that I would like to today to discuss with Mr. Hassel and Jurki and explore what else is happening with 5G. Next, please. Now, they're seeing, even though everything is, I'm painting everything beautiful, there are challenges. Some people started rumors, they have been 5G and we have linked 5G to COVID. There's problems with antenna densification and how we rationalize urban planning. That's a big concern. And 5G, some people are talking about this from a health reason. Some people are saying, I don't like my city to have all these antenna. Other, like Jurki and I have been talking a lot in forums about this, millimeter wave. Is that healthy? Is that, how can that affect you? And those are things that maybe today we can touch to with Mr. Hassel, Bacchus, and Jurki. Next, please.
Here we have.
Now, how do we find information? We have in the GSMA website and the European Commission, there are many information in 5G Americas also. There's a lot of information how 5G is not affecting you. Now, let me shut up and let's start with a wonderful conversation. Hassel, good morning.
Good morning to you, Carlos and Jurki.
Yeah, how can you tell us how was TSTT's rationale for 5G and why you deploy and beyond spectral efficiencies, where are you heading with 5G and
Well, TSTT and just to give you a quick synopsis of us, we are a full service provider in Trinidad and Tobago. And by full service, we mean we provide mobile, wireless, voice, broadband, we provide entertainment. We work in the commercial and in the consumer and in the enterprise spaces. So we have a full gamut of customers to fulfill. Also, being a national provider, we are this mantra, this belief that we want to provide affordable, reliable, and efficient broadband on a global scale across Trinidad and Tobago. And so the way we use a number of different media to get all of that across to the consumers. And 5G is one of the natural steps that we're taking in doing that, one of the evolutionary pieces we're taking in doing that. 5G, when we started, and I'd like to separate this out a little bit, 5G for us, as we have deployed it here, we're doing the fixed wireless access version of 5G. We're not doing the mobility piece. It's just building on a promise that we made a couple of years ago when we did the elevation from WiMAX into our 4G fixed wireless access networks. And we were building it on all of the capabilities and ecosystems that underlie it to be 5G ready and capable when we wanted to make that change. And last December is when we moved to that proof of concept place and did the launch for that. Really and truly, you hit the nail on the head when you spoke about the three underlying things. More bandwidth, massive IoT, and mission critical systems are the things that people think about a lot. There's a fourth to that, and I mean those things, and we will get into the benefits of that from a business perspective and even from a high-end customer residential perspective. But there's a piece to this that I think the Caribbean needs that is a little bit different. Part of what we have to have is a nomadic or portable aspect to the way in which we deliver services to our people. The traditional brick and mortar large building connected to via fiber place still has its place, but we are trying to be as agile as possible in the delivery of services, not just in the services that people can log into, but also taking the services to the people. So a lot of that requires that you have high capacity, high density, reliable, low latency, portable service. And so just think about you having to walk to a large building to transact some type of business. and you live in a rural area and you have to traverse yourself to get here, and it is not one of those things that is easily digitized, meaning that you have to be able to, for example, like a health center, portable health center. So you move into that and you say, look, how do I get this service with all of the capabilities that I need in somewhat of a portable mode? Things like 5G work into those spaces. So that's kind of a lot of the thinking that went into that. Not just the traditional pieces, but some of the non-traditional things like the portability of critical services.
Okay. Now, when we do this, where you are talking about massive cell densification to be able to take care of these critical services, can you give us some insight on how a typical operator are funding these investments? Because all this is changing how we're doing things.
Yeah, so remember the serious levels of efficiency involved with 5G technology. If you run through 1, 2, 3, and 4G, you start from the analog voice, the digital voice, the adding a little bit of data, and then you get to the point where you really have mobile broadband by the time you get to 4G. Most things in 5G is really that the technology will adapt to the application. So the growth in terms of business and opportunities for 5G is somewhat limitless, simply because it's not built for a small or any small segmented piece of what your business can be. So that sets one aspect of it. Mm-hmm. The other aspect of it, of course, is that it is the technology itself is radically different from what we had in 4G in terms of its efficiency. Just your ability, if you were trying to do the same things with building 4G to get, well, matter of fact, 4G precluded you from doing some of the things that you can do with 5G, for example. So a lot of the newer applications were not available to be done via wireless technology as late as 2 years ago. So when you look into what, from a business perspective, what you can do, that is one thing. In the residential space, for example, this is even for what we used to do 2 years ago as being novel and new with a PS4 is now almost passe stuff. It's all into VR and IR, and it's all the R's. And all of those things are very bandwidth intensive, but they're also very latency sensitive. Again, you want to have those things available. Additionally, the cost to serve via wireless has always been and still remains significantly less than trying to do this via any physical medium like copper.
That's correct.
Which you can't do it with anyway, and fiber, which is the predominant piece that we do now. There are some things that underlie that in terms of how efficient you really can be with doing that, and we'll get to some of those things when we discuss the lifeblood of wireless being spectrum. Mm-hmm, but a lot of that is there. There's this great growth potential, the leanness in the cost to serve, and the fact that almost anything you build will be applicable to the medium. Those are really good possibilities.
Yeah. Now, well, COVID-19 changed everybody's life. At least it changed mine. I am here in the house with a bunch of kids, and I cannot escape anymore. There's no more travel for me for a while. Now, how COVID-19 changed the life of TSTT and the realities, and how can you maybe share with us, had that changed any of your thought on how to modify this deployment, this transition to 5G that you are doing, new services, new ways of deploying, new life through that? Yeah.
And again, thanks to CANTO, previously our CEO, Dr. Walcott, had come on and actually did a full presentation on that that spelled out a lot of what TSTT has done and where we are. But dealing specifically with I mean, just look at me, for example. I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't recognize me if they looked at the pictures that we put up on the invite. This is COVID related. We don't have our personal grooming folks available. But COVID has changed a lot in terms of the way in which, and I'm looking at this and I'm approaching this from a consumer standpoint, what I like to call at the point of consumption. The way in which people consume and utilize services has changed significantly since February to now. In Trinidad and Tobago, certainly it has. The restrictions imposed as a result of COVID in terms of people's mobility and how they work has changed things. A lot has changed in terms of how people work, for example. A lot of change in terms of how they do what they do, even for recreation. So the use of our networks, particularly the broadband components of our networks, has changed. We don't have a busy hour anymore. We have a busy day, and then we have a busier hour. The definition of how broadband is used and what is required for you now to operate and live and do things in a, I can't even say a post-COVID world, but in a COVID world, is radically different than what it was before. It has placed additional load on all of our broadband infrastructure or distribution infrastructure. All of that is relatively not exposed, but elevated in terms of its importance to consumers. Well, what have we done? Well, what we've done is utilize a lot of the capacity and flexibility that we built into the networks from the beginning. So when we set out to build the networks, we set them out to be resilient by design and flexible and agile enough to scale as these things come along. We've done that. But if you think about what 5G is, by its very nature, it is flexible and scalable. It is extremely dense. If you add the slicing components, which I'm sure Zerky will talk about, those components, and you add all of that to it, gives it the ability to scale and adjust very quickly. Being a wireless technology, it is quite easy to deploy and move around in the places that you actually need it. So when you consider the changes that are happening in the way schools are closed, so a lot of people are working from not only from home from a work perspective, but as children are also at home using the same broadband connections that we had before, that during the day would have been idle. More so, you have, and this is a typical home, someone who's doing work on a laptop, most likely, a child or two who are probably trying to get some level of education done using machines, and that is also happening at the same time. That's happening concurrently. You add to that probably 3 or 4 phones that are in there that are hanging off of the wireless connection. You continue and you say, okay, what else is there? Well, maybe there's a gaming system in there that is probably doing its own updates. And then, of course, if you have a connected home, there are other devices also competing for that broadband to do what it needs to do. What has now become the minimum broadband requirement for people at home is a little bit different. And we have to be able to adjust for that and ensure that we can provide that level, not just at the basic amounts, but also at the extended, because we haven't added any entertainment into that yet, which is also a prime source that is happening now while people are at home, Netflix, all of that. All of the occupancies for those things have gone up by over 30% in some cases, 40% in others. What 5G allows us to do is, one, so if we started out thinking about this as an enterprise piece specifically for some of the things in the verticals for that, where you're talking about automation and factories and all of that segment remains. Actually, more so now as you don't have the workforce going out to work in what you're doing, the digitization and the automation of those pieces are really dependent significantly on a lot of the inherent qualities of 5G. But its penetration and requirements in the residential space is also growing because of that kind of operation. So it's twofold. We continue to press on with what we were originally doing with fixed wireless access as it relates to an emphasis on enterprise and the pieces that go along with that. But now there are these other things that are happening from a density perspective again, because now it's not a school with 400 people, it's 400 homes with 400 students. So you have to have some of, and again, those things fit right very easily into how the 5G technology works.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Let's switch the subject into a little bit into spectrum, then we go into security. I have a lot of questions here. People are interested on how we're working in security. But let's talk a little bit about spectrum, millimeter wave. When I do not know what have transpired in Trinidad. Here in the US and in the UK, some people have gone a little bit out of the way to fault COVID, to fault some diseases to 5G. The 5G causes health issues, and mainly within millimeter wave. Jurki, before we go back to Mr. Bacchus, can you talk a little bit about millimeter wave and how it's not safe or how it's safe?
Yeah, thanks. These are very elemental and important questions. Of course,
Yeah.
we all are, as individuals, we are worried about our health. So it's it's very important for us to understand the new technologies, what are the consequences. At the same time, it seems to be, to me, seeing the history, and I have been here in this mobile industry already since 80s, so I have seen all the generations from the very first one, analog phones back there in Finland. I utilized those heavy portable devices of 15 watts, and I tested those heavily. And ever since, all the generations, so I have been involved there and trying to understand myself also. So sometimes I have been writing down some summaries of the industry. What is going on there? What is the current status? What is the understanding of the health impacts? And I really still haven't seen that kind of convincing evidence which would systematically indicate that radio waves, to start with, are harmful for people when we are operating within the safety limits that are very strict, and they have put set up by international entities. And the effect there is, if we are exceeding those power levels, so we start then having these heating problems. But those are well beyond of everything. Yeah. So we would need to be very close by the high power radar antenna climbing up there, and
correct, yeah,
and then we start feeling the heat. So this is, for that reason, it is forbidden. As for other health aspects, radio waves, including the millimeter waves of 5G, so they are non-ionizing, meaning that they are not capable of changing the DNA or the cell structure, whilst some other much higher frequencies can do that, like X-rays or the higher side of sunshine. Even they are then in the very far end of the spectrum compared to any wireless systems. And 5G still falls into that safe area, which is absolutely not ionizing. And the new millimeter waves, they have been utilized already for decades in other ways and systems by satellite communication, television services, space exploration, weather forecast, satellites, and so on, as well as radio links. So they have been operating in those areas already. And it still is not possible to see any systematic kind of statistics that our health would be kind of getting worse because of the utilization of those millimeter waves. So I really have tried to make some of these statements.
I know.
Here. And really, it's better to rely on the internationally recognized entities like World Health Organization, the ones that really are making the science out of that, instead of oftentimes misleading or even disinformation of social media. I have seen that Twitter and Facebook, they present many kind of thoughts that are misleading, basically. So
Thank you.
It is always better to rely on science instead of opinions of individuals.
I want to welcome Mr. Phil Williams, Minister of Science and Energy from the government of Jamaica. Welcome to the conversation, and please feel free to post questions as well. Now that we are talking about spectrum, Hassel, what regulators can do to help the deployment of 5G? We are trying to to deploying a technology that has special efficiencies, but at the same time, IMT 2020 require us to use different bands. Can you go a little bit into bands? What is happening in Trinidad, and from your standpoint in the Caribbean, and how regulators can help us, operators, to deploy this better? Because I'm sure that there has to be a cost when not the appropriate bands are being allocated. Please, Hassel.
Yeah, certainly. Just to touch on the COVID piece, as where we are, we had to, I mean, we've had to produce a number of documents, both to people who are doing trials with us and just for the education of the general public, as to, because we have a 5G network. I have had conversations on street corners in the places that you know, you wouldn't normally associate with conversations around technology. But a lot of people would come up to me and say, look, you guys have a 5G network, is it safe? So let's put that into
Yes.
the right context. One of the things about the deployment that TSTT did in our 5G fixed wireless access setup is that we used the existing spectrum that is available to us basically in the mid band. Okay. So we're not in the millimeter wave spectrum up there. We're working predominantly at 2.6. So we're still within. There's no additional exposure. If you believe there is exposure for as a result of using wireless networks, the frequencies that we've used in the current deployment of our 5G network presents no additional risk to you, because we're using the same spectrum as was being used previously in the other pieces. But as to spectrum, now 5G rarely can operate in any of I like to divide it in three: the low band, anything under 1 gig, the mid band, and then they have the high band dealing with the high gigahertz spectrum that we have, as we like to refer to it as millimeter wave. The appropriateness and the sizing of the assigned spectrum goes a long way to allow for those efficiencies that we spoke about earlier to be realized. All wireless networks, the spectrum is your lifeblood. It's real estate that allows for these things to work. And so we have to partner with the regulatory frameworks across the Caribbean and across the world, actually, to be able to allow for the technology and the evolution of the technology to be reflected in the policies and the allocations that come out from those regulatory bodies. I'll give you some examples. Fixed wireless convergence is happening. Mobile wireless convergence is happening. There's convergence happening everywhere. Spectrum neutrality is a serious thing. If regulators isolate and be very discreet about what you can do in various slices of spectrum, then it defeats the convergence movement. If you're telling me that I have this spectrum and I can only use this for a mobile service, well, I have a wireless service, I could use it. No, but you can only use, then you have a problem. It doesn't allow for the efficiencies that you want. It doesn't help in some cases. When I talk about, so that is one piece, the appropriateness of the spectrum. If you want to be able to cover an entire island, you need a low band. Unless it's a very, very small island. You need a low band. If you want to have the capacity to handle dense areas, you need a mid band. And if you want to deliver those ultra high bandwidths to place, then you need to get into that high band. And that is because of the availability of spectrum in the high band. When we work in the low and the mid band, C band spaces, we talk about spectrum allocation in tens of megahertz and 20s, and all the available spectrum is 100 megahertz wide. When you get up into the millimeter spectrum, you're talking about thousands of megahertz in terms of bandwidth. And that allows you to carry the type of information to deliver the kinds of speeds that you want. But all of them have their differences. Low bands, great for coverage. High bands, great for high capacity services. But very little penetration, won't work well indoors, only travels so many feet. It looks very much like Wi-Fi. Low band travels very far, get you all about, but you are limited in the amount of information you can fit into the spectrum. So there has to be a correlation between and an understanding between how the technology has evolved and the convergence that exists there, and the fact that when we hang stuff up, when we put our RRUs in the air and the multipurpose antennas and the common ecosystems that we build behind those things, then what we're trying to produce is one common signal that is being broadcast that has all the information for everyone to use. If we continue dividing up the spectrum and not providing the adequate amounts, then what we're going to do, we're going to pollute the spectrum, we're going to pollute the whole place by having too many sites because you don't have the coverage. And you're going to find yourselves working in a space where it becomes now not economically viable to deploy technology that, if given the right resources, would work actually quite well. So there's a lot of aspects to that piece of it, but the only way we can get around this is through education and through partnership with the regional, all of the regional regulatory bodies.
You mentioned sites. In the US, one of the thing that we are always working is zoning. How is zoning done in Trinidad? And I love Trinidad, but I don't know very well the laws. How zoning is being addressed in Trinidad to ensure that when you are expanding your network, when you're building fixed wireless, is done? Is that a something that is done with the government? Is that by locality, or how? Can you provide us some information on that?
Well, so
how that affected you too, you know?
So to our country, our state agencies that deal with zoning in terms of what is classified as this type of area versus that type and all of that, there are some areas that are specifically set out that way. What we found though is, just like in the world of convergence, those areas are also very well polluted, with the exception of maybe industrial estates, right? Where those, and the rules are particularly fixed for those. Everywhere else is a mishmash of all the possible things that could be exclusive built into one. All of this speaks to the fact that you really have to have a level of a method of delivery that allows for that mix to peacefully coexist. Mm-hmm. It's really, and I believe it will be the same throughout the Caribbean. It's a lot more defined in the developed world. Here it is not so, with the exception of very specialized pieces. In those very specialized pieces, you can be very targeted and deploy things specifically to them. So that you can do, for example, you can use millimeter wave spectrum across, if you're dealing with one of those industrial parks, for example, where you have major factories. You want to ensure that you have all of the pieces that will make that highly efficient and full of control and fully digitized and transformed and automated. But then that kind of expenditure, you try to fit that into on a global scale across everything else, then it doesn't fit. So we have to be very measured in what we do, which is why when we deploy the technologies that we do, and 5G is one of them that has that capability, we have to be as agile and as flexible as possible to cater for all of the independent needs. We're a customer-focused organization, and therefore anything that the customer requires that is within the technology's ability to deliver, we try to cater for it at the time of design and implementation. So the zoning thing is not so much of a specific and strict thing here. What we do have is a lot of combined areas.
Okay, and then there's no issues when you try to densify antennas in one area. Does the communities accept this, or they are, or that conversation is done as at the major level?
We've had some pushback at the individual level within communities, and that's just not just about 5G. That's about wireless technology in general. Correct,
in general. Aesthetics.
Yeah, it comes up for various reasons. And we continue to work with the state agencies to do that. A lot of this revolves around education. We have a lot of people who have suddenly become RF experts. I don't know how that happened. A number of people seem to know a lot more about RF than a lot of us who went to school.
My mother is 87 and she's an RF expert now.
Exactly. So we run into that from time to time, but generally the benefits and the collective benefits of having wireless services available in your area tends to drown out that minority that wants to resist that kind of development. Think about this, and I mean, this GSMA stats, right? As of January of this year, 60 operators acquired 5G licenses. I don't know how you're going to fight against that. And I
Correct.
mean, it is where it is. What I think people's biggest fear is that millimeter spectrum, where you're talking about basically when you get to that level, what happens is that the 5G network really resembles a Wi-Fi network in terms of its reach and density. So that is where I think a lot of the pushback is coming from. The number of small antennas, the ecosystem is required to do that from an RF and a RAN perspective. But people, I think, have become generally accustomed to seeing our macro sites and some of our underneath strategies now, or pole sites or lamp sites, and understand that that is a significant part of the infrastructure that allows you to have the type of portability and mobility and coverage and resilience of service that you need to have in this modern world.
Yeah, I'm going to switch subjects real fast to two items within 5G that GSMA is fairly involved. We have a task force that is working on edge computing and what we call operator platform, and we have a network slicing task force that everything is run out of our team in North America. Two things. Jurki, can you give a very brief introduction of what we're doing in both two aspects? Then we can go back to Mr. Hassel and see how is Trinidad looking at that. Go ahead, please.
Sure, thanks, Carlos. Network slicing is one of the very key services or functions in 5G. So it makes really the difference, and 5G will be different thanks to network slicing compared to any other networks that we have had before. Network slicing basically means network over network. So you can create different type of networks within the very same area for different verticals, meaning user types, depending on their needs. So it means that operator can offer the resources of the network, both radio network and core network and even transport network, more focused on those needs of the field. So if I'm representing, for example, critical type of vertical who needs highest reliability and lowest latency and even high capacity, so I can dedicate that kind of resources to that specific vertical, whilst within the very same area, I can then dedicate for Internet of Service type of very small scale and simple sensors, IoT type of slice, which means that I only use a couple of tens of kilobits per second every now and then. So I don't need that huge capacity there in that area or case. So within the same area, I can distinguish between different type of service levels, and that makes the difference. So we can utilize those resources much better. It is beneficial for the verticals. They can have the user experience, what they are expecting, and the operator can really dedicate the resources only for the ones who need that. And we are working on the vertical needs in order to set up those slices in our region, in North America region, Caribbean, North America, I mean USA and Canada. So all these areas. And we need to find out what are the real needs in the field. So we are investigating and interviewing quite interesting verticals that have not traditionally utilized cellular services so efficiently. They might have relied on Wi-Fi networks instead, but it is not optimal for many of these verticals. So 5G can really bring them something really beneficial. So that is one of our tasks at our network slicing task.
Thank you. Now, Hassel, this is something that is very interesting to me, because like Yuki said, this is the first time that some of these enterprises, some of these factories are looking at cellular connectivity as a big option. Can you go really fast into what are you seeing in Trinidad within that aspect? Which industries are clamoring this kind of connectivity, and if you think you guys are looking at network slicing as a possibility in the future?
So network slicing was inherent in the design when we started building out all of the networks. When we did the last network transformation that we did, we embarked on it a couple of years ago. All of those pieces were inherent in the design. And with 5G, it's 5G NR, the 5G GC, 5GC. So those pieces, if you follow the standards, you had to have that ingrained in the
Correct.
design from the beginning. What you have to do in some cases is to drag industry along. In Trinidad, we have quite ambitious and sometimes fearless people working within industry, and they have partners that international partners that have dabbled into some of the verticals associated with them. What we did, our strategic partner in 5G is Huawei. They have massive amounts of deployments of 5G worldwide. I think they have the most. And so we leverage a lot of their global services to not just to say we have a network that is able to do this, but to say, listen, this is how you can use this technology in your industry, in the agro industry, and how can you automate your workings within your factory floor. You don't want to do this with Wi-Fi, which is why we did not do the automation before, because of the security issues, because of the fluctuation issues. Those are the aspects of 5G that are not really spoken about. The resilience, the persistency of it, the consistency of it, and the fact that it is so dense. It allows you to connect so many things, and with slicing, you can allow them to get just what they need. That is inherently there. And what we're trying to do with some of the trials and on the enterprise side, my counterpart who handles enterprise, Ian Ball, has been working with a number of enterprises here to get to that level. That we're also trying to partner with the state to do the same things. So it's not just about, and Joki's right, it's all about exploring the verticals. Some of them exist, some of them don't yet, but as with 5G, as I said, the network adapts to the application. As we come up with something, it can happen. There are some that are happening worldwide, which we'll follow, but we really have to build this from us as the operator, telling you, the enterprise guys, look, this is an opportunity for you to digitize your business. This is about digital transformation and changing the way in which you work. And we have the technology here that allows you to do it.
Now, you make one great point. At GSMA, we said that mobile IoT is equal to secure IoT. And we have always said that when you do IoT, taking into consideration the security aspects that you inherit in cellular with the SIM, with the networks, everything will work better than if you go to a unlicensed solution. A lot of people are asking how TSTT is making our 5G more secure, or how 5G makes our networks more secure. Can you expand into that? How the enterprises can look at this and say, I should look at this more seriously because this is going to be a more secure route than what I have today. Please.
So from a security standpoint, let's just take the global security standpoint at TSTT. The security posture we use, and I like to define it as in, through, and around. We protect everything that's inside our network. It's safe and secure inside of there. We only allow what we want to get through to it, in and out. So that's the through piece, and that is efficiently managed. And then around, we ring fence up everything else. So there's nothing that is supposed to penetrate that. That is the security posture for the entire organization. That permeates all the way through all of the different sub pieces that we do. For 5G, now think about how the evolution of wireless and mobile, they always build it forward. So there is no less security in 5G than there was in 4. And you keep building on those as you move forward. That's the way it works.
Good point.
Mobile networks generally have to be secured, encrypted, etc., etc. But what we're dealing with now, in the way this is happening, is that we're working on just the same way in which the technology itself has evolved from a performance and all the other pieces. Just to get that to work itself required a significant amount of work. There is equally as much work going into the security of those aspects. Now, let me tell you why this becomes kind of important, because it's not just the 5G technology that you have to secure. Think about because we just spoke about the density of what we have, the amount of available items to be connected to the 5G network within IoT. A number of those items are not secure. You would have heard the horror stories of people breaking into significant enterprises through coffee machines, through your refrigerator, now your car, through all of that. So when we talk about 5G security, it's not just about securing the RAN. It's not just, it's end-to-end security from the beginning all the way out to the consumer device. And I think that is the approach that is making this even more secure than anything else. It's the fact that you have that. Wi-Fi is not secure in any way. And SSID is not even a secure thing, much less the actual technology itself, the way in which it works. People, you can get into those very often. And again, it is not persistent, not consistent. When we talk about 5G, and one of the least spoken about aspects of it is this security piece. But it is not just the security of the network. It's the end-to-end security of the entirety of that ecosystem that is being built. And that is the posture that we have at TSTT.
Yeah, we at GSMA deployed about 2 years ago new guidelines for IoT security, and it was around the specification that we elevated to 3GPP for LTE-M and narrowband IoT, in which we don't only, like you said, talk about the security of the network, but on the RAN, we also talk about the security of the devices that are going to be connected to the network and how operators are going to be doing that. This is something that I'm glad that you pointed out, because that is something that is inherent. It's part of the design, and it's something that the enterprises need to know it. That when you're doing mobile IoT, we're taking a lot more things into consideration. It's more complex, but it's better. It is more secure.
And we can demonstrate that. And I think that is part of that education and communication that needs to get out there, so that people get to understand not just the obvious benefits, but those benefits that are underlying them. They're saying, listen, by using this technology, you're making your business more secure.
Correct. Jurki, real fast, and when we're doing security, how can we expand it? I am in those conversations. It's an unfair question, but when we're doing network slicing, when we're doing operator platform, we are also looking into how do I expand the security within roaming? Can you provide us some guidance on how is that done today?
Yeah, so up to now, networks, all the generations, 2G, 3G, 4G, they have been developed originally during the era when security threats were not so significant as today. So they have always been following their own era, the possibilities and challenges of that time. So 2G, which started off back in 1991, I was still in Finland at that time, and I saw the very first GSM network there in the world there. So there were no basically almost at all security threats. So at that time, GSMA security was more than enough. It was much better than any other system at that time. But as we know now, there are all kind of solutions already for a long time and new appearing. So those of false base stations that can capture the traffic there and transmit that kind of idea. So all of those experiences of previous generations, they have been enhanced and adapted to the new generation. So 3G, at that time when 3G was reality and it was specified, so they knew already that, okay, false base station is reality, so let's tackle that problem and make mutual authentication there, which tackled that original 2G base station problem. But then there were new problems and issues, because hackers and bad actors, they are always up to date and they invent something more. So it's like the same problem as lock and the key. So you can always enhance the lock, but somebody will find eventually some kind of means to replicate the key.
They'll get in, yeah.
But 5G is inherently new system. So the virtualization, first of all, and then the very new way of making the architecture for also security there. So it has changed dramatically. 5G security architecture, basically, it has been renewed completely. So there is merely this original authentication type of methodology there, but then after that, everything goes according to the new specifications, the key derivation per each element there, and the scrambling of the data as well as signaling for different elements. So it has been enhanced greatly. And even as you mentioned, this Wi-Fi and its non-existing security, basically. So 5G is trying to tackle even that one when we integrate Wi-Fi access point. So it can be more integrated within 5G infrastructure, and 5G will deliver those keys for even that type of access types. So it enhances also not only 5G as such, but the access points which attach there. But there will always be issues, and more time passes by, so more people are aware of those security solutions, trying to then make some tweaks in order to attack that. But it was good note, 5G has that integrated security, which is much better than
much better, yeah, of course. Now, let me ask a question to Hassel. How can we, I work for an association, GSMA. We are here thanks to CANTO, which is another association of operators. What can we do better to pass the word, not only on that 5G is secure, but take out some of these problems that the industry is seeing that 5G is harmful to you? How can we pass the message better? Are we doing a okay job? Can we do better? What can you give us that we're missing?
Carlos, I mean, we
you can be
do a lot of things together. We've been to a number of conferences. I think, CANTO has to be applauded for this type of intervention that allows us to have this type of conversation. I think one of the things about organizations like GSMA and ITU and so on is that they and 2GPP is that you're so engaged with the technology. You're always building it. We're tweaking it. We're collaborating to do things. You're checking with us as operators. We're going back to you for things. Oh, this won't work well. Maybe add this into release 17. Add this into release 18. And so you're constantly working on the technology. And because of that, you get immersed in it and look at it differently than the rest of us. And I say us, not trying to put myself in like I said, I always like to look at this from the point of consumption. I think it's not just on places like the GSMA and all of the other international bodies. I think we have to start to define the narrative. What we find, I think we tend to be a bit too reactive. Somebody comes on and says, hey, COVID-19 is 5G. Okay, we have to put something on it. And somebody will come up with something else or something. Rather than us being upfront and being, very loud, very definitive, define the conversation and take it to the public. Guys, this is what we're working on. We've tested this, it's safe. We have your own local, our operator here tests all the time, our regulator tests. They adopted the standards that were set up by the ionization committee. They chose the lowest end of the spectrum, meaning the most stringent of all the, Nobody knows that. Nobody's gonna go on their website and read it. We have to, and it's not just you guys, it's us, it's everybody. The entire industry has to be more vocal. It has to be more forthcoming. It has to be more noisy about the great things that we're doing and the reason why they're safe and why you can use them and how you can use them and why you should adopt that in your business. If we don't do that, then we will be continuously on the back foot, having to react to the next crazy story that comes up from someone else. It's yes, what you guys have to continue to do is to continue to define safe, progressive relevant standards that allows for the technologies to continue to evolve. And in doing so, we as an organization, the entirety of telecoms and IT and all of us as progressive pieces of the service provider, manufacturing, the vendors, all of us, have to be very, very out there and out front, stating what we're doing, saying why it's good, defining the narrative, and getting people to buy into it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, people that know me know that I am always looking into how to promote technology for the Caribbean. We launched Tech for Girls in the U.S. We moved it with the help of Teresa to the Caribbean. How can we work better within the Caribbean to promote third parties to create applications and devices that can implement it in 5G? Let me give you one example. Within GSMA, we do a lot of hackathons during Mobile World Congress, and those hackathons are mainly around either LTE-M or narrowband IoT, in which we say, here are devices, we talk to one operator. Can you go into some aspects? How can some developer in Trinidad take advantage of what you're doing and said, let's work together. Let me try a tool.
No, we've TSTT has hosted hackathons. We continue to do that, but at a fundamental level, TSTT is heavily invested and will continue to invest in innovative technologies and with innovation in general. TSTT has partnered with the University of the West Indies. There is currently the B-Mobile UE Innovation Lab powered by Huawei that exists today on the campus, the St. Augustine campus of the University of the West Indies. And it's there primarily for that purpose, for all types of innovation. And this is in partnership with the university. We've done private hackathons with other folks as well. We partner with the university at other levels as well. We bring people in to help solve some of the problems that we ourselves have here, and with great success and results. We continue to push innovation within the national community, not within TSTT only, within the national community, because ultimately we want to get to the point where innovation becomes part of our DNA. It's not something that you learn easily. It's kind of hard to learn innovation. It's a process, a way of doing
process,
things.
Yes.
And so we have to foster that from the earliest stages that we can, where it now becomes the way of life, so that when we're ready to do a lot of the things that we have, that question that you asked about, how will that happen? That is just naturally how things occur. Organizations like CANTO, Caribbean-wide organizations, and so who have the ability to stretch their reach across. I mean, we work in Trinidad. We are primarily here. We do have some inorganic growth happening across the islands now with some of our next generation and XAS services. But in terms of having a global push Caribbean-wide, for the kind of intervention that you're talking about, it would require regional bodies to do that. I'm glad we have the minister on board with us there as well. I'm hoping some of our own ministers and fellow board are listening to us, and some of our technocrats, to understand that there is a global requirement for us to have to start to think that way. Think about what some of the other Asian countries did. They brought in, hired entrepreneurs and innovative guys from America to come to teach in their universities, because in their work, they were very regimented in the way they learned and so on. Innovation was not something that was natural to them. And they said, listen, if we're going to do that, then we're going to have to bring people in who can do it. The Caribbean is nothing else, is no different than that. What TSTT is ensuring that we do is provide the ecosystems and environments that allows that to happen.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah, that's what is needed, because in my visits to Trinidad, I have seen a big desire from a lot of industries to launch new technologies. You guys have the brain power. You have great developers in Trinidad. Now, I think with with the combination of TSTT, CARICOM, CANTO, and other agencies, maybe we can do things that are very interesting. Now, if we expand on this subject, um, within network slicing, artificial intelligence, edge, where do you recommend some startup to say, hey, focus here, and you might find some good applications? That's from a CTO standpoint.
You know, I probably this says my age, but like I've been around since AMPS and all the way through to 5G. So I've done 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G now, and multiple flavors of them in between. The thing about that is that when you look back over it, you tend to get perspective. If someone is building a network today, they probably won't have the networks that a lot of our operators who have been in this business for some time have. You'll probably go straight to some technology and start building from there. 5G is relatively new. It's still being developed. It's a lot of CPE is still coming out. Phones are still coming out in the mobile space and so on. So that kind of limits where you are. But fundamentally, if you were going to build a network today, you'd build a 4G network with a 5G application on top of it. You won't build 1G, you won't build 2G. You'll probably start off with your phones at VoLTE and you'll make that work. So in that kind of, that will work. From an application innovation piece going forward, really, again, you approach this from the point of consumption. What is it that we are doing now that we can do better if we did something else with it? What are we not doing now at all that should be digitized and we're not doing it? What is the convenience factor? What is it worth to me as a person to be able to do this with an app as opposed to using a different method? Once we start thinking along those lines and don't have the restrictions of the environment in which to create those things, it's one of the things I think that we kind of don't have just yet, which is you see it in niches. We sponsor and participate in a number of awards for different elements of enterprise, and there's an innovation award which we did here. And these guys come up with things from scratch that turn out to be excellent business ideas. But it all started out with, listen, there's a need for this to happen, or this is not efficient, or this is not doing this the right way, or this transformation that we have to do into the digital age requires that we not do this at all. Let's do this in another way. And I think a lot of times it gets forced on people because somebody just decides they're going to do something one way and not the other. But if we really work at this from the point of consumption and focus on the customers and the consumers and what they really need, there's an infinite plethora of applications that can be created. And we want to give you the environment to do it.
Yes. Now, I'm trying to fit all the questions, and we have many questions that I have not addressed, and I apologize for that. We had Yogesh, you asked about 5G, how the native function of cloud in 5G core and radio network works. Jyrki, do you want to explore that one briefly? And then I know you have a website that he can go later and look at things. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thanks. So just in case I sent out this web link there, I like to write down things there. And thank you for good topics, by the way. I'm getting motivated to add this type of information. So cloudification is one of the key topics in 5G, and it will be really beneficial there. 5G could be built up without clouds, of course, but it doesn't make sense because it has so many benefits there. And cloudification, first of all, cloud meaning that instead of having those dedicated hardware equipment and their software tackling each of their own function, so we can have common hardware or resources, and we use instances on top of that in order to tackle those network functions. So it will optimize greatly the resource utilization there for the core network as well as the radio network. including transportation there, so transport network. So the benefits are great there. It will make things more fluent, more cost efficient, and it opens also new businesses for new players. So cloud basically means data center. So we will have data center infrastructure, the centralized data centers as well as the regional ones, and they would house then the edge computing capabilities there, which is beneficial for many kind of new verticals, such as virtual reality applications. So if you are nearer to the processing by edge, so you can have that virtual reality type of applications much faster. So you can really experience that low latency, almost real-time experiences there, which is beneficial not only for entertaining type of applications, but some really beneficial for medicine type of things and self-driving cars and that kind of stuff. So it will be elemental there. But I can extend that cloudification summary.
That's a big subject. It's an extensive subject.
A very big subject.
Yeah. Now let me ask, and I don't know, maybe it's our last question. Let's see how we're doing in time. I know we went over 1 hour, and I apologize for everybody. What are Hassel? Let's go back to the regulatory implication of 5G. What are, because I think that is something that we need to get out of the way to move forward. All this regulatory implication of 5G, and what constraints do you see from an operator standpoint, of course, for the region to move forward with 5G? And that maybe we can add spectrum changes. You know, what is in your wish list?
No, I mean, we touched on all of the pieces of it, and I know some of it quite earlier, but the idea is this. I think from a process perspective, I think regulators have to partner with the service providers, the technology development people like the GSMA. Carlos, the GSMA did quite recently an intervention with our own regulatory people here, of which we also joined as it. Some of our strategic partner was involved in it. We all looked at it. The idea is that there has to be some common ground where we realize that this is all for the greater good. Network operators are not in the business of grabbing spectrum to have it. There's nothing to do with it other than use it to provide services for the population. And so but the thing is, as the technology has changed, the decisions and the allocations and the type and the usage requirements and so on for the spectrum has to evolve along with the technology. When a lot of the regulatory rules were written, the spectrum restrictions and so on were done, they were done in a time when 5G wasn't even conceived. You have to be able to adapt. And I think that is the thing. There needs to be an agile approach to spectrum management across the Caribbean. That is what it is. We have to be agile in our business to make sure that we're able to address the needs of our customers, to keep them safe, to ensure that what we have is right. What we're providing to them is not only appropriate, but applicable to what they do. There are a number of things that go into us remaining relevant in terms of what we do and providing the best service that we can. Well, there's no different in the allocation of resources. I am telling you, I've just been doing this. We're in the middle of some of our fiscal adjustments in terms of managing how we're going to spend and so on. And I am telling you, differences in spectrum allocation changes cost in orders of 3, 4, 5, 6, 700%. This is not small stuff. There's a big difference between 10 megs of spectrum and 20 megs of spectrum.
Big difference.
And if the barriers, if the reason behind that is an artificial one, that it's not something that this is how it was done before and this is how it is going to continue to be, then that will not augur well for our ability to provide cost-efficient services it limits you and restricts you in different ways. So the conversations and the partnering between the regulators and the industry, and I mean the industry, not just the service providers, but industry, people like the GSMA, et cetera, where it is we have this global understanding of what there is just across the Caribbean. If you're looking to at all of the telecommunication type of regulatory pieces that we have, and you look into them at the areas of spectrum, they're all different. They're all different. Some of them have already gone the way of converged spectrum and spectrum neutrality, where this is a spectrum you have, you can use it for wireless and mobile services, use that. Some of them are extremely restrictive. This spectrum, you can only use it for mobile services and you cannot use it for anything else. And if you do that, it has to be common ground across that, or else we will continue. It doesn't speak well for integration across things, for having people move around. It doesn't speak well for the complete convergence of services where you commoditize all the pieces, because the building blocks are too different. We must get to a point where the regulatory bodies are in partnership, in concert, and in step with all of the technology that we have and the demands of the customers that we're trying to provide the service to.
Great message. Thank you. Thank you. Well, guys, we're getting close to the end. Is anything else, Jyrki, Hassel, you guys want to include that I have not touched? I'm getting a lot of messages like, Carlos, you are way over.
No, we'll do a part two, I think. I guess if we have that many messages, we'll do a part two. And we'll probably start by answering a number of the questions. Once the questions are there and I have access to them, I will, through CANTO, I will ensure that those questions are answered to yourself, Carlos, of course, and get them done. I just specifically want to thank CANTO for giving this type of opportunity to speak with other industry leaders, some of the technocrats like Jyrki and of course Carlos. We meet at a number of places, just that we're only meeting virtually now. But I mean, it's really this is a really good series. I think the number of registrations and so on speaks to the fact that the topics that they're coming up with are relevant, and I certainly will volunteer my time once it's we can do it to be part of this type of forum. I just wanted to say thank you to CANTO.
Jyrki, I will let you 2 seconds there.
Okay, first of all, thank you so much for being part of this discussion. I really enjoy. 5G is a complex topic. It is a wide topic, so we could only scratch the surface a bit here. So there are many other subtopics there, and even complete vertical environment there. So how self-driving cars, for example, can benefit from 5G and critical infrastructure and so on. So there is whole world now opening thanks to 5G. 5G could be beneficial for many kind of things. And the forthcoming releases by 3GPP, release 16, and then beyond that, so they will give even more possibilities via their enhanced functionalities and new functionalities like satellite components, for example, and that kind of stuff, and train type of communication, or beyond vehicles, as we know from traffic, so they could be extended to ship-to-ship communication, that kind of stuff. Many kind of items there. But thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here.
I want to thank both of you, Hassel, Jyrki, for a wonderful conversation. I wish we had like 10 hours to do that, because you know, all three, we can talk about this for hours. I want to thank CANTO for the opportunity, and everybody that connected in this morning. Remember, I believe the next seminar is Thursday, June 4th at 11 a.m. Michael Winning will be talking about
Calix.
Yeah, from Calix. Best practices and operation in a new normal. You know, guys, everybody stay home, stay safe, and stay connected with GSMA and CANTO. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.